Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to unpack what I call the ultimate paradox of Gen Z. We'll be looking at the multifaceted causes of their anxiety crisis by exploring these concentric circles of pressure that they face every single day. And to do this, we're drawing directly from the latest psychological data, research, and most importantly, the voices of Gen Z themselves. So let's dive right into this paradox. Think about it. Gen Z is growing up in an era with arguably the highest standard of living in human history. They've got infinite information and global connectivity literally right at their fingertips. But despite all of that, they are struggling with their mental health in totally unprecedented ways. You kind of have to ask, why is the most digitally connected generation we've ever seen also the most chronically lonely?
It's truly a stark contrast. On the one hand, you have unmatched living standards, right? Immense physical comforts, amazing medical advancements, and instantaneous global connectivity. But then, on the other hand, you have this incredibly dark reality. We're talking about overwhelming psychological burdens, record high levels of anxiety, deep depression, severe burnout, and just profound isolation.
And the data proves this is a measurable reality. It's not just some passing phase or a trendy talking point. According to research cited by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, Gen Z is a staggering 80% more likely to report anxiety or depression compared to millennials, Gen X, or boomers. 80%! That is a massive generational leap. So where on earth is all this immense pressure actually coming from?
Well, let's start with our first section, trapped in the algorithm. We're going to look at this micro level of pressure that lives right in their pockets to see how the digital world is fueling the crisis. 6 hours a day. Just let that volume of time sink in for a second. Gen Z is the first true generation of digital natives, and they are essentially trapped in a 24/7 algorithmic feedback loop. We're not just talking about screen time in the traditional sense here. This is an entirely new psychological environment that they are forced to navigate every single day.
And the toll this takes is measurable, and frankly, a little bit ironic. Surveys show that over half of Gen Z actually associates using social media with being bored, and yet nearly half call it addicting. So they're scrolling because they're bored, but over 40% say it makes them feel totally isolated. Add in the constant notifications and the relentless pressure to perform online, and you get constant digital exhaustion and severe sleep deprivation. This environment fundamentally rewires the brain. Psychologists often point to social comparison theory to explain what's happening. You know how it used to be, right? You'd compare yourself to your immediate neighbors or maybe the kids in your math class. Today, Gen Z is constantly measuring themselves against millions of filtered, curated, algorithmically boosted strangers. Every single scroll is like a tiny subconscious pop quiz asking, am I successful enough? Am I doing enough? All right, let's zoom out a bit for our next section. High-stakes schools and isolation. Stepping away from the phone, we have to look at how their immediate physical surroundings and schools have shaped their development. Just look at the constant environmental stress they've grown up with. Since the Columbine tragedy in 1999, active shooter drills have become as routine as fire drills. Then in 2002, No Child Left Behind ushered in this massive culture of high-stakes educational testing. Fast forward to 2020, and the COVID-19 pandemic forces them into profound social isolation right during their most critical years of development.
Imagine the physical toll of that academic environment alone. Harvard research actually found a 15% spike in the stress hormone cortisol in students literally just from sitting in homeroom before a standardized test. The system implicitly told them their entire worth was tied to a Scantron sheet, completely stripping away time for free play, socializing, or, just being a kid.
Listen to how Ria, a 21-year-old quoted in an India Today feature, described her daily reality. She said, "It's like this constant buzzing worry in my chest, even when nothing bad is happening." Wow. That is the exact sound of a nervous system that has essentially forgotten how to switch off because of these compounding environmental pressures.
And to make matters worse, while past generations certainly dealt with typical teen angst, Gen Z is uniquely facing the complete disappearance of physical third spaces. Older generations had bustling malls and free community spots to just hang out. Today, between vacant malls, urban hostility, and strict curfews, they are driven further and further into online isolation just to find a basic sense of community. Which brings us to our macro-level section, navigating a global permacrisis. Let's talk about the existential weight of a world that feels like it's perpetually on fire. When we compare generational fears side by side, we see a distinct, really overwhelming shift. Yes, the silent generation and boomers faced World War II, and millennials faced 9/11 and the 2008 recession. But those events were processed differently. Gen Z is living through a uniquely broadcasted, real-time permacrisis. Their stressors, like climate change, rapid economic shifts, and the rise of AI, are streamed directly to them without any filter whatsoever, making the doom-scrolling feel completely inescapable. These massive global issues weigh incredibly heavily on them. According to a huge Deloitte survey across 44 countries, 40% of Gen Z feel stressed almost all the time. 60% say world events leave them feeling completely overwhelmed. And 41% are specifically anxious that artificial intelligence is going to replace the very jobs they are currently studying so hard to get.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that their anxiety isn't an overreaction. Psychologists label this anticipatory anxiety. It's a clinical dread regarding a future that hasn't actually happened yet, but feels entirely inevitable. When you're constantly told the economy is unstable, the climate is collapsing, and AI is taking your job, that fear becomes a chronic state of being.
But hey, we aren't going to end this explainer on despair. Let's look at our final section, Breaking the Stigma, to see how this generation is actively fighting back and healing out loud. Instead of suffering in silence like past generations might have been forced to, they are actively healing themselves. Over 4 in 10 Gen Z adults actively seek therapy. They are utilizing mental health apps, shattering historical taboos by talking openly about their struggles, and radically redefining success. They're demanding better systems and putting their psychological boundaries way ahead of traditional hustle culture.
What you should really take away from this is that Gen Z's mental health crisis is not a personal failing, it's not a lack of work ethic, and it's certainly not a sign of weakness. It is a highly logical, completely rational reaction by a human nervous system that's been placed inside an unprecedentedly irrational, high-pressure, constantly scrolling environment.
I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. Gen Z is doing the really hard, painful work to heal themselves, go to therapy, and break generations of stigma. But are the rest of us doing the work to fix the actual systems causing their pain in the first place? Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and keep asking the big questions.